कई बार इन डीलिंग विद योर फैमिली एक चीज़ होती है जो कि आप बहुत ज़्यादा चाहते हो और वो आपको मिलती नहीं है। इमेजिन कि उस सिचुएशन से अगर आप 4 दशकों तक निकले हों, फॉर 4 decades. In this video, I want to talk about something which is very close to me, and it made a huge difference when I could actually resolve that issue for myself. So one of my common pattern that I discovered about 6-7 years back, which was a massively transformational moment for me, was that I always wanted my dad's approval for everything. So the whole background is that I grew up in a lower middle class background. My dad worked for JK Scintillate in Kota, 4 brothers, and me and my twin brother, we were the youngest, and both of us were like a little bit more studious. And we had the advantage of our elder brothers, basically their failings and things they could not do, like get into engineering and all. So this was the life back then. लेकिन जब आपका एक ट्विन होता है स्पेसिफिकली, तो एक चैलेंज होता है कि नो मैटर व्हाट हैपेंस, पेरेंट्स एंड अप कंपेयरिंग यू टू in every single circumstances. And there's a story which I'll get to in a minute, but what happened as a result of all that is that I actually desperately always wanted my dad to say, you're doing good. And it's not that he was saying you're doing bad, but there was always this thing that you could do better, you could do better, you could do better. And when there is a subtle comparison, then it kind of builds up a story in your head. But that was not the biggest challenge. That when I found that was not the story. So the story is a little bit different. And sometimes you'll be surprised how simple and trivial it is. Something that gets stuck in your life. And the biggest catch of that I will share with you at the end of the story, that how do you find your own story of what has held you back in life. So this was about when I was 8 year old. And I remember कि एक बार हम लोग we stayed in JK Synthetics in Kota, so there's like a whole colony. And एक बार around 8-9 years की एज में हम लोग we were staying in a 2-bedroom apartment, and my dad got a promotion or something, and so we moved to a different apartment which was एक पीछे गली में हमारे. And वहाँ पे वो 2 bedroom का apartment था, but वहाँ पे एक open area थोड़ा बड़ा सा था, so it was like pretty cool. So and we all wanted to go and stay there, and it was actually summer. Like summer in Kota is like summer, very very hot. And हम लोग उस घर में गए, चारों भाई लोग, सब लोग उस घर में चले गए. And we are all like, there's no fan and anything. So I'm a genius. So what did I do? I'm like, oh cool, I'm going to create that Maharaja kind of pankha. So I went home and got a wicket, cricket ka wicket, और एक भारी सी दरी and रस्सी, and I come back. And I go to the drawing room, and उस टाइम पे पेंटिंग चल रही थी, तो ऑलरेडी वो काफ़ी अच्छे से वो लगे हुए थे. So I stood on top of it and put a रस्सी through जिसमें फैन टंगता है उसके अंदर. There was no fan, there was no electricity, and I put the रस्सी in there, put that लकड़ी का, and I make this beautiful, amazing thing, and which you pull with a rope, and it becomes a Maharaja Pankha. And I was like, genius! Like for 8-year-old, it's amazing. So I then went and got all my family in the night. Got them out and said, come on, see this, कितना अच्छा बनाया मैंने, कितना अच्छा बनाया है. And everybody's like, oh man, this guy is pulling us. But they wanted to pamper me. I was youngest, so they wanted to pamper me. They all come there and like, okay, saying, I don't remember what they're saying, but I remember what I was wearing. I remember where I was standing. And my dad looks down at me and says कि बेटे तू पागल है क्या? And it was not like a jab or something. It was like, are you seriously crazy? And obviously now it looks pretty stupid because parents say these kind of things all the time. But at that time, that 8-year-old boy's world came down crashing completely. And that 8-year-old boy decided that getting my parents' approval, my dad's approval, is going to be the most important thing, and I'm going to work on it. And again, problem क्या होती है, एक बार जब आप इस चीज़ को सोचने लग जाते हो, तो वो चीज़ बहुत बड़ी होती है आपके दिमाग में. And 8 साल के बच्चे का जो है ब्रेन इतना डेवलप नहीं होता है. You still the brain neurons are still, like the synapses are still getting disconnected. So you make a story about it कि ये तो यही है, मैं तो यही हूँ, and it's my mistake and I must do something better. And it kind of became a driving force, but also a negative driving force. And one of the lessons I've learned in life is that there is nothing positive that can come out of something negative. So I kept wanting to get my dad's approval at every step of the way, including being the joker in the family, to make them laugh and make them feel good. including being like careless even at times, which is, and this is like contrary to common sense, that sometimes when enough number of years pass, your behavior actually becomes in such a way that the very thing you want, you actually don't want to have it, because if you have it, then because you built a whole life not really having it, you don't know what the unknown is going to look like. So that's what happened to me, that I always created damage for myself. I always would go to some place and then stop. And it was incalculable. And I wanted my dad's approval for every single thing. And in 2017, this whole thing came down to the blows where I really found out what it was that did it. And at that time, I knew that I had to talk to my dad about this, but I had to make sure that he understands that this was not his mistake. That was a story which I told myself. And I did that in December in 2017. I went to the US and my dad was there with my twin brother at the time. And I spoke to him very heart to heart. And before I spoke to him, I told him कि पापा ये मैं इसलिए नहीं बोल रहा हूँ क्योंकि आपकी गलती है. He was like 7 years back. My dad was like 76-year-old. He's 83 now. And I knew that my purpose is not to blame him. My purpose was to actually tell him that how did I create that whole drama in my head. So I spoke to him and I told him. And in the beginning, he was a little bit shocked, but he got it. He got this. That I was not trying to blame him. I was just trying to tell him that I wanted it, and I'm not going to go for it any longer. I'm going to live the way I think is appropriate and right for me. And he encouraged me, and he understood, and we had a great conversation. And lo and behold, things drastically changed after that. Because I looked for it, I could not achieve much, or at least didn't have a feeling of achievement. And even when I achieved something, I always wanted more. This entire thing disappeared. And I actually became the go-to person in my family, my extended family, with cousins reaching out to me for advice and guidance and all of it. Whereas earlier, they would think that, okay, Kapil Bhaiya and all Kapil is basically this mockery, funny, fun-loving guy. And there's not a bone of seriousness inside him. So it changed. The approval came flooding in. So what I'm trying to tell you through this story is that it's not an intellectual process, because intellectually, my wife used to tell me, ki, why is it that you are such a serious person, you so much depth about you, but you become like this joker in front of family. You become this careless guy in front of your family. You do things just because you want approval from them. So it's not an intellectual process, it's an emotional process, something which is deep inside your hurt, a chain that has held you back. And once you discover that chain and you break that chain by following an appropriate process of having conversation with people, not blaming them, but actually letting them know that you created this on your own, it actually sets you free in your life. Because at that time I could have said कि पापा आपको better पता होना चाहिए था, आपको ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए था. लेकिन लोग करते हैं. और मुझे मालूम है कि मैंने अपनी बेटियों की जिंदगी में क्या स्टोरी क्रिएट किया है. Because I used to be an angry young man, throwing their phone because they're watching it too many times, or throwing their favorite vampire book or tearing it up. I've done stupid thing which I'm not proud of as a dad, but I created a story in their life as well, and I apologized. And they found their own story, because when my personal development started, theirs started as well. Because everything that I did, I'm ensured that my family did it as well. Anyways, ये स्टोरी मैं इसलिए शेयर करना चाहता था आप लोगों के साथ, क्योंकि आप कुछ भी अचीव करना चाहते हैं अपनी ज़िंदगी में, कुछ भी चाहते हैं, कहीं भी जाना चाहते हैं, आपको ये बात पता होनी चाहिए कि it's not a matter of tactics and strategies and doing some skills and capabilities and all those kind of things. It's a matter of who you are, and who you are is what you got when you were a small child. And if you're not able to do that, no matter what effort you put, it's not going to ever add up. So it's really important to dig deep within yourself and find out what has really held you in these chains. And when you do that, when you're truly free, that's when you create a very powerful life. I hope कि इससे कुछ you've gained something, and I would love to see your comments below, and please like, share, and subscribe, because I'll be sharing more of such stories which have helped me transform into the individual that I've become, who has infinite layers now. And forever, this person will be work in progress, but there are infinite layers of depth at which I'm able to go to.